We're going to propose an experiment.
Keeping the cloak on.
Would you ever consider not raising? Well, it depends.
It depends.
That's our answer to everything.
Thanks. Please click subscribe.
So what does it depend on? I think it depends largely on position. Say we're on the button with ace king and we're playing 2-5, somebody opens for 20, another person calls. I think, and we're going to assume for all of these hands through this whole episode that the stacks are deep. You know, short stack situations, there's situations where shoving and this and that, different situations.
Agreed.
But we're playing live cash games, stacks minimum 100 BB, but let's just say 200.
Right. Well, I mean, at least 100, because like if you're playing 1-3, you might very well be playing a $300 stack.
That's right.
So yeah, at least 100 big blind stack, and we'll go from there.
Right.
Everything continue.
Yeah. Nothing here applies to short stack or tournaments.
So there, yeah, right. So there you are on the button, and there's an open to 20 in a 2-5 game, one call, and
I think everyone in this room and your room would want to raise here.
Right, pretty much the whole internet would say that's a 3-bet right there. To a like what, 75, 80 bucks would be about the right speed. Yeah. Okay, that's easy. And even if there weren't a caller in between.
Sure, the idea is if you know you're going to be last on the hand and you have ace king, that's a basic raising situation where not raising, in our opinion, would be a mistake.
Agreed.
Okay.
That was the easy part.
Yeah, that was easy. So now let's look at when we're going to be out of position. When you know you're going to be out of position.
Right.
Which means you're in the big blind, let's say. This is the question I put to my clients. It's folded to the button, and it comes back around to you in the big blind.
And he's made it 20.
Right, he's made it 20.
Okay.
And I asked them, would you ever consider not raising here? And that is exactly what we are going to ask you to consider. If you're in the habit of re-raising your ace kings in the big blind, then we're going to propose an experiment.
An experiment,
That's
indeed.
one way of looking at it.
It's a great way of looking at it. Sure.
Yeah, and the experiment is to not raise and see how you like that. And so what we're going to do in this video is basically lay out several reasons in support of not raising. There are certainly plenty of reasons in support of raising.
Right.
But you might not be familiar with the reasons to not raise, and that's what we're going to go through.
So I think one thing that we can start with is deception. Here's the fundamental problem that we have when we 3-bet ace-king out of position. We know we're going to be playing out of position. We've created a bloated pot.
Right.
And we have, in our opponent's minds and probably in truth, narrowed our range to a relatively snug range that's a lot of big cards and big pairs.
And that's a huge narrowing compared to not raising.
Right.
Because all you did was defend it in the big blind. I mean, people expect that to be a very wide range. And the way this comes up after the flop, the classic way is that if, let's say the flop is 8-7-6. And things get heated, well, if you had re-raised with ace-king, or re-raised at all, they can be fairly sure you don't have 10-9 when you re-raise from the blinds and make a big c-bet or whatever.
Right.
Whereas by not re-raising there, your range is very wide and they have to be on guard against all kinds of things. You can represent all sorts of hands that you can't represent. When you do 3-bet with the ace-king, do you feel like obligated to c-bet?
I don't feel obligated to c-bet, and in fact, I've been reading particularly Andrew Brokos's new book, Play Optimal Poker. But it's about the ranges. And so for instance, if the flop comes 8-7-6 and I've 3-bet, that flop doesn't favor my range. So quite often I will be checking in that situation, and then we'll see how we go from there. Maybe he checks back, maybe he bets and I call, maybe he bets and I fold. But I don't feel the need to come blasting out with a c-bet if I've 3-bet.
Well, good. The problem I run into when I used to 3-bet and we're talking about ace king in the blinds when you know you're going to be out of position, is that when the flop comes like that and it's obvious to both of us that it didn't hit my range, then my C bets on the flop, turn, and river, wherever they show up, I'm really only representing an overpair.
Right.
That's the only story I can legitimately sell. And there's all kinds of problems there is, well, they might not believe it. They might just call me down with any pair.
Right.
But two, I become quite susceptible to pressure.
Yes.
Because they know that the most I can have is an overpair, and so maybe it's only one pair. They can try to push me.
As you say, it becomes very difficult if he is prepared to represent more than one pair, because you really can't represent more than one pair.
Right. It's sticky. Back in the old days, limit hold'em was what we all played, and I played that for a living. And back then, if you had ace king in the blind and you're against loose players and they raised, if you didn't re-raise with that hand, you're just throwing money away. And so then no limit became the game everybody's playing, and I'm playing no limit. I'm re-raising with my ace kings. And for the first couple of years of playing here in the Bay Area with some really, really great pros here, and I was watching them, and they would turn over ace king. They'd turn over ace king without having raised before flop. And I'm like, my first thought was, these are the worst players in the world, right?
And you're saying that they weren't three betting?
They were not three betting with their ace king.
Okay.
And they would get to the showdown, I'd see the ace king, I was like, wait a second, that guy didn't raise before the flop. Something's wrong, right? And then after about a year or two of losing money to these people, like week after week after week,
tired of it.
I was like, maybe I should try that.
Right.
You know, and I did. And I started not re-raising with my ace kings from the blinds. And it just made a world of difference right away. And for me, you know, as you've heard, I like to be comfortable. I like to be happy in my place at the table. When I've got ace king and I'm facing an unknown range and the pot is already big and I'm missing the flop 2/3 of the time and I've got the flop, turn, and river to go, that is just a sick feeling. If I don't have to do that, if I can still make money without doing that, my life's going to be a lot better.
Right.
So I was very attracted to the whole idea, and the experiment has worked tremendously well, and I've been doing it for like 15 years.
I've got this friend, Benton Blakeman, who's a pro in Las Vegas, and he wrote something very interesting about this whole topic recently. He talked about a situation where he raises on the button, and somebody in the small blind 3-bets him.
Okay.
And he chooses not to 4-bet. He just flats the 3-bet. It's a slightly different situation, but his point there is it allows him to have an uncapped range in a situation where his opponent probably believes that his range is capped. That is, his opponent probably doesn't give him credit for ace king in that situation.
Yeah.
And that does two things. One, it means that his opponent will still have hands such as bad aces or weaker aces. And it means that Benton has this very strong hand that is well disguised going forward in the hand.
I like it.
Okay, so it's a slightly different situation, but it's the same idea of kind of keeping the cloak on with your ace king.
Right.
One of the reasons that I will consider 3-betting in the blinds is if I'm in the small blind with ace king and there's a relatively late open, particularly for a smaller bet. So let's say they were playing 1-3 and somebody opens to 10 in the cutoff.
Right. You think he's got a wide range.
And he's got a fairly wide range.
Okay.
I'm awfully hesitant to just flat there because it's going to offer the big blind a great price to come in, closing the action.
Right.
And now I have to act first in a three-way pot against two other hands that are all over the place.
I don't know how to act without you.
If you choose not to re-raise there, which is still fine, you're inviting the big blind to come in, and now you're creating a situation where it's a three-way pot, your first act with your ace king. And my general rule of thumb there is, if you miss the flop, just check fold. You know, no big deal, right? Especially if it's 4 or 5 players. That should be a normal thing.
Right.
And this is another part of this whole strategy of, it isn't just whether or not raising is a good idea. It's just sort of it shrinks your whole fluctuation out of position, shrinks everything down. It's just like, okay, I'll call, see the flop, miss the flop, multi-way, out of position, ace, king, check, fold, no big deal.
Right, exactly.
And the option is re-raise, c-bet, get in there. Both ways, there are pros who play both ways.
Absolutely.
But that's why we're bringing this up.
Right.
The whole idea of not re-raising from the blind is totally legit. How you play post-flop is, if this is new to you, is going to be part of the experiment.
Right. You're going to be in slightly different situations, right?
You're going to be in situations you're not used to, but you're also going to be putting your opponents in situations they're not used to, which is another advantage to this whole thing.
And what he's talking about is kind of an interesting situation because, like, let's say that you do, for whatever reason, somebody opens late and you just flat with your ace king in the small blind and the big blind comes in because they can, right? And the flop is, 4-5 jack and you check and some betting breaks out and you're like, phew, I'm done.
No big deal.
Right? And you're like, wow, that's never happened to me with an ace king before, but whatever.
It's just a weirdly pleasant feeling to have ace king, miss the flop, and have put no financial or emotional investment into this thing. I want to double back to one thing we talked about earlier, one little clarification, which is when we were talking about imposition, that it's accepted and good and right to raise, re-raise in position.
Yes.
We talked specifically about the button, but that also applies to the middle positions and hijack and cutoff too.
Right.
If somebody opens in front of you, then you should definitely be re-raising there because the re-raise means you might end up last to act.
Yes.
Okay? You have to have some chance of being last to act, and then re-raising is fine.
It promotes your chances of being last to act, and it adds more money to a pot where you very probably have the best hand.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of good that comes from free betting there.
Oh, totally. It's one of these things where doing the normal thing is the right thing.
So, Tommy, how shall we summarize what we've talked about today?
I think it's pretty, am I allowed to use the word simple? I think it's pretty simple.
Yeah, yes.
If you know you're going to be out of position, don't 3-bet. Try that for a month or two and see how you like it. Otherwise, as normal.
Okay. Yeah, I would say that if you know you're going to be out of position, give serious thought to not 3-betting. If you are in position or think you could force your way into position, that's a good time to 3-bet. Yeah. So, Tommy, there's different ways to succeed playing ace king. Sometimes you'll re-raise with it, sometimes you don't. But one sure way to succeed, click the subscribe button.
Watch all our videos.
And leave a comment down below and tell us what you think of the video series. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks.